I woke up with my hair cut and dyed by my mother-in-law. Fiance refused to defend me and wants to keep the peace. I never thought I'd be posting this here, but I really need an outside opinion. I, female 26, and fiance, male 29, have our wedding planned for December this year. This incident happened last week and I think I might have to cancel the whole thing. Fiance proposed to me in Jan this year. I noticed mother-in-law didn't seem really happy about it. I thought it was weird, but then again, it was sudden. Mother-in-law herself has been engaged for a year and she's the kind to make it a competition. Also, we didn't always have the best relationship to begin with, but I really hoped she'd get over it. My fiancé even said he'd talk to her. But nope. She remained cold and didn't even come wedding dress shopping with me. We sent the save the date in August and almost immediately after receiving the message mother-in-law called. I was taken aback because she had never contacted me personally before. On the phone, she seemed chirpy and really insisted to see the wedding dress. She also said she'd like to be more involved with food and drinks because it was her special day too. I felt she was almost edgy over it. I didn't want to risk anything and politely told her that I wanted the dress to be a surprise and had already planned the food and drinks for the day. She did not take it well. Basically pressured me into involving her more. I tried to pacify her by involving her in decorations and wedding cake, but as the days passed she got more and more obsessed about it. She literally called the caterers behind my back and altered the whole menu. I was already so stressed out over the wedding thing and her bizarre behavior really bothered me. Both my parents talked to his side of the family and once again fiancé told me he'd talk to her. This all came to a head last week. Sister-in-law texted me in the middle of an appointment, saying she had something important to show me. She then proceeded to send me the picture of mother-in-law's dress for the wedding. It was a full-blown wedding dress of an almost similar design as mine. I immediately called my seamstress and she confirmed she had gotten a call from mother-in-law a week before asking for my wedding dress's pictures. She told her that she was taking stress off me by making sure it's being fitted well. I almost got a panic attack. I immediately called my fiancé and mother-in-law's partner. I tried to call mother-in-law but she kept disconnecting. Fiancé did say he'd talk to her but I was losing my patience. Rehearsal dinner was to be this week and I really wanted to be in peace for once. I told him I needed some time off and I'd call him the next day. I spent the evening with my friends to cool off and went back to mine and fiancé's, house late in the evening. I saw mother-in-law and fiancé were already there, clearly in the middle of an argument where mother-in-law kept calling me that woman. I tried to intervene but she wouldn't stop screaming. I eventually lost my patience too and screamed back at her, calling her a few choice names. Not proud of it, but I was really done. I told them to leave my house and we'd talk tomorrow. Fiancé tried to talk to me but I didn't have the energy. I didn't even wait for them to leave. I just went back to bed. Cut to next morning, I feel weird. My head felt lighter too. I thought maybe I drank a bit too much with friends, but boy, was I wrong. I immediately screamed when I saw the mirror. Someone had chopped off my hair and dyed them red. My hair was all uneven as if someone clearly wanted to damage them. I was so distraught but somehow collected myself and tried to look for my fiancé. He was still sleeping on the couch from the last night. And mother-in-law, she was in the guest room sipping coffee as if nothing had happened. I asked her if she had done this and she accepted calmly. I wanted to scream so bad but her calm composure actually scared me. What if she tried to hurt me next? I tried to wake up my fiancé next. He eventually did and looked surprised seeing me but in a knowing kind of way. I told him then and there, he had to choose between us today. I can't have that crazy woman hovering over my life now. She tried to take over my wedding, went behind my back to destroy everything that I planned and now this. Who knows what she can do next? This man, I kid you not, I've loved for 3 years just said he'd talk to her. Yes. That's all he said. I did not stay to listen any more of his bull. Immediately packed my bags while he tried to backtrack. He tried to gain sympathy by saying things like I should understand and that he's her only son. I just left. I called my sister-in-law because in this moment I felt like I could only trust her. She had warned me about mother-in-law before. When I reiterated the incident to her, she said that mother-in-law was actually trying to sabotage my wedding for months now. She even asked my sister-in-law about every detail so she could somehow make it about herself. What blew me more was the fact that fiancé knew all about it and in sister-in-law's words, was keeping me away to keep the peace. I really need advice on this. Can I even marry this man? He keeps calling me but I'm not too sure now. I'm 23 female, and my boyfriend of 5 years is 29. We met 6 years ago while I was doing an internship at an aeronautical piece construction company. Despite his young age, he already had a permanent position there and was one of the engineers in charge of me. I first saw him after I left the director's office. I was told that the person responsible for my training was waiting outside. I had to quickly change and put on my, extremely nasty looking, uniform. When I stepped foot out of the changing room and finally set my eyes on my said trainer, I didn't expect him to look like a Greek god. I couldn't help the blush that formed across my face at that moment. I thought to myself, damn, he's tall, the kind of tall that would give you neck problems. And for the record, I'm not short myself, so it's saying something. The second thing that came to mind was how strongly he was built, all muscles and I didn't remember anyone telling me that engineers were required to be this beefy. To make matters worse, his face had all sharp edges, and he had the prettiest set of eyes I'd ever seen, or maybe I was just love-struck. I just kept silent. I was too focused on admiring the ethereal creature in front of me, maybe too much for comfort, because the poor guy realized I was ogling him, and that made me feel like a sex offender. I turned my attention away from him and back to how I looked, also known as with that ugly uniform on and that equally disgraceful helmet I had to wear for safety reasons. Then it hit me. That same uniform that made me look like a Great Depression worker didn't seem so bad on him. It was unfair. How am I supposed to focus on my internship now, I asked myself. Instead of lamenting on my fate, I decided it was best to make the most of the situation at hand and use him as a motivation to get to work on time. It worked surprisingly well since all I could do for the next 4 months was to wait for the upcoming day so that I could see the dude again. At first, there was no real chemistry between us. I'd say it was just me drooling over my mentor and barely hiding it. While he, on the other side, was doing his best to ignore my lewd gazes and focus on explaining the different designs the company had created so far. Before any of you judge me, I did learn a lot during this internship. It's just that his being so hot made it harder to focus. Anyway, after 2 months of seeing each other daily and spending the most significant part of our time alone together, I started to notice a shift in his behavior. He got a bit more flirtatious and started teasing me every time he caught me glancing in his direction for too long. We started going out for lunch instead of just eating at the company's cafeteria. It eventually became a routine for him to text me after work. He'd talk to me about pretty much anything aside from work, and it's really what allowed me to get to know him better. And by the end of my internship, he asked me if he could keep in touch, a request I gladly agreed to. We began to seriously date a few months later, and a year into our relationship, we decided to move in together. I also need to mention that we don't work in the same place currently, since I found a job somewhere else. This information is relevant later. Somewhere around last year, my boyfriend told me that they had a new addition to his team and that it was a girl. And even if she was already working under contract with them, he still had to supervise her. It felt like déjà vu to me. I felt something in the pit of my stomach that I couldn't quite decipher, a mixture of fear and anxiety, but I decided to brush it off because I didn't want to be the cliché jealous and insecure girlfriend. Sure, my boyfriend was good looking, and I'm sure tons of females would hit on him every day, but that never seemed to affect him, or at least that's what I thought. And I never caught him being sneaky or talking to anyone behind my back, so why worry now? The thing is, I had all the reasons to be insecure. Because as I got to know more about this new recruit, I quickly understood that she was to me what a butterfly was to a moth. In the first year following her hiring, she and my boyfriend started to get along very well, and as a result, he'd tell me a lot about her, too often to my liking. Apparently, they shared more than just a job, as I soon learned that they had the same hobbies, that means, gaming and fangirling over the Star Wars saga. It stung a bit to see that someone he barely knew seemed to be closer to him than his girlfriend of 3 years. But what hurt the most was actually seeing her for the first time in person. Because of my line of work, I often didn't feel like pampering myself. I was working most of the time, and stilettos weren't exactly the dress code for my job. Add this to the fact that my wardrobe mainly was sweatshirts and baskets. So, you can imagine my surprise when I saw that woman with whom I shared the same job, looking like she came out of a Chanel catwalk. She was neatly and elegantly dressed, her hair flowing down in golden waves and her makeup on point. Did it help my insecure self? No. I was now terrified. I saw her as a threat to my relationship. It's been X years now since they had been working together, and my boyfriend started to refer to her as his best friend along the way. It's not that I couldn't accept that my boyfriend had female friends, he did have quite a few, actually, and it never seemed to bother me. But then again, none of them were half as intimidating and good looking as this one. I kept up this facade of the confident woman who trusted her man, but then something unexpected happened, and I was left with no choice but to drop the act. A few weeks ago, my boyfriend came to me, saying that he had something urgent to share with me. I waited by his office building after the end of my shift. I was exhausted but still happy to see him again. I saw him step out of the building soon after. He noticed where I was and started skipping in my direction. He seemed excited, perhaps a bit too much. As he got next to me, I questioned him about the news he had to share with me. He then casually told me that he was sent to Brazil by his boss to see the progress of the firm extension implemented there a few years ago. He then said that since it wasn't much work, it might as well be considered as some well-deserved vacation. To that, I agreed and told him it was the perfect opportunity for him to get some rest. What he failed to mention, though, was that he wasn't going to be sent all by himself. In fact, 2 of his co-workers were going to accompany him. One of them being, of course, his best friend. The worst part is that I learned this from her. Seeing how they were friends, I felt obliged to invite her over to our house a few times for dinner. And during one of those times, she shared with me how excited she was to visit Brazil for the first time and how she wished I could also tag along. I did my best to hide my surprise, but I'm sure she caught up with me. Now, I'm not sure how to approach this subject with him. I find it hard to accept that my boyfriend will spend 3 weeks at a resort in Brazil with his bombshell of a coworker/best friend and that nothing will happen between them. I also don't want to start a fight right before his departure. What should I do? Update: I didn't expect this post to blow up, lol. I've read all your comments, and since most of you are asking for an update, here it is. A week before he had to leave, I told him about how that made me feel. At first, I only planned to talk about his vacations, but then I started pouring out every bit of insecure thought out of my chest, and it felt great. I said that having a female best friend was already painful enough, that I hated how he'd spend as much time with her as he did with me. I also mentioned that he did nothing to reassure me of his feelings for me. And guess what? He said I was just being paranoid and that he had never seen her as anything else than a friend. He also seemed resolved about going to Brazil with her, and there was no talking him out of it. My goal wasn't to convince him to change his plans but just to be told that I had nothing to worry about and that he still felt the same about me. Instead, I was met with his cold gaze and harsh words. I felt stupid and insulted by his attitude. Our conversation soon turned into an argument, and I broke up with him. It was that or spending the next 3 weeks worrying that my boyfriend would cheat on me, and with the workload I have, I really don't have the time to worry about things like these. I, 56 male, need to start this off by clarifying that I have been nothing short of an amazing dad to my kids and my ex, 55 female, for as long as her and I have been divorced. We separated on really bad terms and I made sure to put in extra effort to make sure that didn't seep onto my relationship with my kids. It was a focal point of my everyday routine, to check up on them and take a step in the right direction of strengthening my relationship with them. I remarried a couple of years after my first marriage and had 2 more beautiful children with my now soon-to-be ex-wife, 47 female. Again, terrible terms, but I would like to believe that this time, the reasons are a bit outlandish and ridiculous. But then again, if a relationship can fall apart because of simple arguments, then it was never meant to go far from the start. There's another side to the story as to why the relationship failed, which you will come to learn later on. My wife and I are in the bait of hosting annual parties, mostly birthdays for the kids, but we both enjoy the planning process and it's usually our source of relief. We usually host them in celebration of 3 of my kids' birthdays that are in the same week and the first on the following New Year's. So we have all the reasons to make it as grand as we can afford to make it. This story takes place in one of those parties and the very one that led to her wanting a divorce, even though I can safely and objectively say that she's in the wrong here. 2021 was a really rough year for everyone, but I will forever be traumatized by the events that happened to me during it. It was a huge series of unfortunate events and my life at home with my wife was becoming less and less amenable. She's a needy woman, and though I always loved that about her because I love giving myself. I'm at a point in life where I need to take from her. I need her support, her affection, and most importantly, her patience. A lot of people that I was really close to passed away due to Ovid, and 2 of my kids that live away from me suffered severe symptoms. I was genuinely under a lot of stress and in a constant state of anxiety all throughout the year. When its end was finally upon us, I was hyped up about the upcoming hosting. I was also really excited because I knew that my wife and I kinda used this as a reset button for the mistakes and we've done throughout the year. We bond over the process leading up to the party and then we spend it with friends and family and have a conversation at the end of the evening that kinda settles scores for the 2 of us, and I really appreciated that. I was looking forward to something that was going to result in the end of my marriage. If only I knew then what I know now. Anyways, the weekend comes up and we're preparing and I see that she's treating me in a really snarly and unpleasant way, which I obviously didn't appreciate. Only she didn't even seem to notice that her attitude towards me was so toxic, that or she was really adamant on invalidating my sentiments. I really didn't appreciate her dropping on the floor and bluntly telling me to pick it up or go walk the dog while I do the right way or whatever way she would find to demean what I was doing for the party's sake. I tried to start a conversation about it, but she swiftly turned it into an argument and wasn't cooperating at all, and that seems to be an attitude that she carried along with her to the party. Evening came around and our friends and family gathered at our house to celebrate my youngest son and the one at the end of the weekend. I hope this hasn't gotten too confusing. Just that at the end of that weekend, it would be a 3-in-1 birthday party. Plus a long tedious list of things, a reunion, a chance to make good memories, but usually and most importantly, a reset button. Her attitude had gotten to its lowest point, while other couples around us laughed and evaded their usual life problems through something that was supposed to be for us. I was genuinely getting emotional. I'm an emotional guy, and for the most part, that's what she has always loved about me. Not this time, I guess. When I went around her with my kind words and gestures that usually worked best that day, she pushed me off, yelled at me and told me to get my act together so we can get things over with and get over myself. I was really hurt, and then that quickly escalated into frustration, and I was demanding why the hell she was the one putting up this act when I was the one with more things on my plate and more reasons to hold it against her during this evening. She was holding a plate and smashed it against the sink, then told me that if that was the case I should run around and tell people that she had cheated on me with our neighbor, who was one of my kids' age and could barely be considered an adult. She wasn't shy with her tone, she wanted to be heard, and she proceeded to run outside to the backyard where everyone was shocked by what they had inevitably just heard. I would have immediately snuck out the gates if I were in their shoes, but I wouldn't need to do that because my wife then picked up a jug of water and poured it on me. "This'll help you cool off even more." I literally remember her saying that, and the lights inside my head went off. I took it from her hand, threw it near the bonfire and pushed her down the pool, and for some reason, that was the peak of the evening for her. She went on and on about how I discriminate my kids from my first marriage and how I am a deadbeat dad and abandon them just because, and I quote, her meow meow tasted better. I was genuinely humiliated. I literally wanted to reach into that pool and pull her out, then push her again so she could shut the hell up. The reason she's now asking me for a divorce isn't because she realized she won't be able to deal with her guilt about cheating on me in the worst way possible, or that we had embarrassed and humiliated each other during one of the most important evenings of our marriage. Not that she had confessed to doing something horrific in front of everybody that was there, or that she called and insulted me, things that the kids at the party are never going to forget. The tipping point for her was that I poured a glass of champagne on her and pushed her down the pool when she wouldn't shut the f about it. There's a part of me that's really happy this marriage will come to an end and I will probably never have to meet or talk to her family members that were there that night. Honestly, the idea of having to explain how the hell things escalated from us being cool and chill around one another to us throwing on one another and pushing each other around while tearing apart our family, is a lot more terrifying to me than standing in front of a judge and explaining to him why this woman shouldn't be allowed custody of my kids. Yes, I am planning on going for full custody because I honestly don't think she would be able to manage. She might have called me a deadbeat dad BC. She thinks I'm abandoning my kids for her, but God knows that I've not changed towards them, nor will I ever do that for anyone. To me, everybody comes and goes, except for my children. And this very marriage proves exactly just that. So last marriage didn't end as poorly as this one, which meant that my first wife and I split custody. That's obviously not gonna happen again because she's not going into this with a friendly tone, and I have no plans of nothing but doing that. Update: this happened barely a couple of weeks ago, so the divorce process is just starting for those of you asking if I did manage to get custody. My lawyer says that my finances and history with my ex-wife is promising, and it should grant me a good chance at having my request. I've also seen many people saying that this is just for my side and that I'm exaggerating. This is somebody's life, and I wish it was an exaggeration of something simple. I'd rather suck up the guilt any day over having to watch 2 more of my beautiful kids suffer the fallout of my marriage. I'm guilty of a lot of things, but the story happened exactly the way I told it, so you invalidating my point of view is not only disrespectful but extremely annoying as well. Opinion 1, not the a-hole. It's true that you'd have the teller's bias and keep the information that villainize you to yourself, because it always takes 2 to get to this point in your marriage. I would like to say that those comments were valid, but it clearly wasn't a you problem. She was being eaten away by the guilt of doing something she considered so morally f***ed up, and she was letting that seep onto her perception of the relationship. It was that, or that maybe her faith in your marriage had already fallen apart and it was the reason for her to cheat in the first place. No matter what the cause may be, it was wrong on her end and yours as well, and this is overall a situation to be in. Opinion 2, you are the a-hole, no matter what her reasoning behind losing faith in the relationship and actively trying to ruin it. You should have absolutely not let it get to a physical point. For her to spill water on you in an attempt to worsen the situation and validate her extreme reaction was one thing, but for you to shove her hard enough that she would sink into the pool and want to pull her out again to repeat the process is another. This just means that you felt no remorse in doing something that I personally consider equally as messy as her making your private matter a public affair, and I think both of you are the a-holes here. Opinion 3, I'm not sure how I feel about this. Good on you for trying to keep up a good relationship with your kids and take them away from someone that's clearly too unstable to handle them. But why would she call you a deadbeat dad or scrub or whatever in the heat of that argument? Was there something you did? If not, they'll understand and appreciate it, and this hassle of ending the marriage is far better than living a life of constant fighting and arguing. They will definitely understand. Last Friday I was out for a drink with a friend. We'll call him Mark. We stepped outside to smoke a joint and Mark's friend saw us and came over to say hi. We'll call Mark's friend Damon. Damon is super energetic and pretty aggressive. Seems like he's coked up, but I didn't want to make any assumptions. He sees the end of our joint and asks for a hit. I said yeah and handed him the last of it, and he said no, I want a big joint. I like to smoke a lot, you should roll me a big one instead. I told him that's all I had, so it's either that or nothing, and he obliged and finished the joint. Then he proceeded to spend the whole night pestering me to go home and get some weed to roll him a big joint, and it drove me crazy because he wouldn't take no for an answer. This didn't seem to bother Mark at all. So we go our separate ways and I went home frustrated. The next night myself, Mark and a group of my friends went out to a techno gig, and at the end my friend who was DJing invited me and my group to an after party. At 2 a.m. the club is clearing out and we're getting ready to go to the after party. As we're grabbing our coats, Damon appears with a drink in his hand wondering why everyone is leaving. I pulled Mark aside and said, hey, just so you know, he didn't get an invite to the after party and I don't want to get in trouble for bringing a stranger into my friend's house. Mark nodded and went to talk to Damon, who was busy creeping on the girls in our group, making them visibly uncomfortable. Next thing I know, Damon is taking me into a separate room to talk, asking me why I hate him and why he's not allowed to come with us. I just told him that he wasn't invited and it's nothing personal. Then Mark steps in and says, yeah, but after last night you said he annoys you, so you do have something against him. I said I don't need to explain myself, he didn't get invited and it's as simple as that. Then we all went out separate ways. This has now gone around to all my friends now, who are upset that I'm treating Damon this way because he's from a rough background and I should be more understanding. Here's my thing, it's not my job to teach grown adults how to behave. I'll be totally civil with him like I was on Friday, but I draw the line when his behavior starts affecting my friends. He was making the girls in the group uncomfortable and annoying the rest of us. I'm not going to bring him to an after party to bother everyone and have my friends get mad at me for bringing him. Now a bunch of our friends think I'm an asshole who won't tolerate someone from a rough background going through a hard time. I will tolerate a lot, and I feel for him, but the thing is, although his mental health isn't his fault, it's still his responsibility. I've talked to a bunch of my friends and a majority of them have said I'm in the wrong, so now I feel like I'm in the minority and it has me wondering. Am I the a-hole? Opinion 1, not the a-hole, you're not obligated to like your friend. I have friends that I know only tolerate each other because of me. I recognize that, so I don't force them to be together often, but they are cordial when they have to be. I don't get in the middle of their issues with each other, either. Mark shouldn't try to make you and Damon best buds. If he continues, that lets you know that they come as a package deal. You may have to distance yourself from both of them for your peace of mind. Opinion 2, not the a-hole, the creeping on girls would be the last straw for me. The pushiness itself is annoying, doesn't matter the background. Also, how the hell can you roll up on someone and demand they roll you a whole new blunt? I was visiting family in Cali and was hanging out with cousins and their friends, and they smoked a lot, and I kept getting past joints to the extent that when they went to top up I got some myself and just handed it to my cousin to use. I felt like I was leeching since everyone else had weed and was using it for group use. I knew people that grew up rough and the rule is bring your own wine or chip in to buy some. It blows my mind that not only didn't he accept a no but also wanted to go home and get your weed for him, especially when he just met you. I, 19 female, decided to get my dog pregnant before getting her neutered. And decided to keep one of the puppies and find a great home for the rest. I spent the entire pregnancy taking extremely good care of her. My aunt expressed interest in having one, a grown-up, stable job, big house with a big backyard, and taking good care of her dogs. She lives close and I could check up on the puppy. The puppies were born in the middle of the night. I was alone. My brother was supposed to come home that night and he decided to not come home at all because he didn't want to help me. I ended up calling my sister for help. My dog gave birth to 3 puppies, and I took care of them while my brother made fun of me for being scared that one of them wasn't eating. He died after a few days. A few weeks go by, and the 2 puppies are growing up, and I call my aunt to set a date for me to bring the dog by. She said she was out of town for work, so she suggested I wait a few weeks. In the meantime, my brother's girlfriend texts me and asks me if I could give her one of the puppies. She also said it was for her 5-year-old sister. I told her no, They all have homes, because I had already told my aunt that I was giving her one, and I intended on keeping one. She didn't respond. I immediately got a text from my brother asking me about the puppies, which sounded like they were together. I said I already told sister-in-law that they all have a home, and he got mad. He insisted that I give her a dog. To be honest, even if I hadn't agreed with my aunt, I would have said no anyways. I have been to her house. They have a dog that is aggressive to other dogs. On top of that, they constantly have the gate wide open, which would lead to the puppy running away. And no matter how mature the kid is, she is a kid, and she would treat the dog like a toy and probably lose interest in it in a week. I said to my brother I already said no, they all have a home, and he kept insisting until he got even madder. He started saying that it cost me nothing to give her a puppy, that I was being selfish, and that even if I was going to give one to our aunt, I still had one to spare. I told him no and stopped responding. I started to tell him how unfair it was that he wanted a puppy for his girlfriend, and he was in the wrong for putting her feelings first, since he was saying that my actions were hurting sister-in-law. He said if I didn't do it, it meant I didn't like her and her family, since I was denying the 5-year-old a puppy. I then said he had no right to say that because he ditched me when they were born and he never showed interest in helping me take care of my dog when she was pregnant. He then demanded I apologize to sister-in-law for my behavior before he could apologize to me. I told him I wasn't going to apologize to sister-in-law even if he did apologize to me first, since I wasn't in the wrong. He threw in a fake apology and kept demanding I apologize to sister-in-law. So, am I the a-hole?